he encouraged us, especially as he grew older, and he encouraged those of us who had been around a long time to go and get our degrees. He didn't do that in the beginning. So Dr. Verhoeven went and got his degree, and Reverend Hung got his degree. And I was another of that era, and he asked me to get mine, to get a PhD. Well, I had a PhD from DRBU. The degree I got was a legitimate PhD at the time, and then later the capacity for giving the PhD was taken away from us, and we could only give the master's. So the master told me to go get another one. I didn't do that. I have to say it's really good that Dr. Verhoeven did. It's really good that Reverend Hung did, and I suppose I should have. It's one of the places where I didn't listen to the master so much. But I want to say that his whole being here with us was an education. In other words, we had a lot of classes under him, and we also had the sutras every day, at least once a day, maybe 2 or 3 times a day. And he never stopped doing that. For all the years we were with him, every day he would teach the sutras. And he would encourage us to look at the commentaries and the text ahead of time, and sometimes he would call on us to give the explanations. So there was that. And the classes he had, many classes, for instance, learning matched couplets, was something we Westerners had no concept of. And he took us through learning Chinese matching couplets, and we became very excited about it. It was one of the most interesting classes we had. So even though we didn't, a lot of us in the beginning, he didn't encourage us to go out to universities, he was giving us a strong education, not just in the sutras, but in things that would help us. For instance, when we became teachers, when we taught in the schools. He also advocated education because he didn't get much, had 2.5 years of formal education, set up a school, free school for people in his home when he was about 18, and educated many people who would never have gotten it otherwise because they couldn't afford it. And he would say over and over again that the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow, and that education was absolutely the most important thing, that they needed to have a broad-based understanding of what the world was like. And so his education was, controversial. He would bring in someone for the weekend and introduce us and say, okay, this person is going to do something for you. Like the man he came who hypnotized us. We had to all go, we had to all sit in the No Words Hall, and for about 2 hours while this speaker hypnotized us. How did he do it? Well, he read like this. He read and he read and he read and he read, and you couldn't even understand what he was reading, but he just kept reading. And pretty soon, I was sitting in the front row. In the back, all this commotion started. And what had happened was, he'd called on the ghosts and spirits to possess the people in the room through his hypnotism. And the people, our people, like you, got up and danced and yelled and sang, both monastics and lay people. And went on and on and on, and then finally, you don't have to put this in. You're scared. Finally, he wound down with, he kept reading and reading and reading and reading and reading, and he kept winding down, and he didn't stop, and we couldn't figure out why, because it got all quiet again. I never turned around, but I heard what was going on back there. And it got all quiet, but he didn't stop. And finally, one of his attendants came up and told him something, and then he stopped. And what had happened is, we had someone with a disease similar to Parkinson's disease in the room, and that person always shook. And so he didn't know that that person always shook, and he figured there was one ghost who was not leaving that person, so he waited and waited until finally it became clear that that was an illness and that wasn't a ghost. So, and then we're supposed to, then we have a countdown, you know, and we go for a debriefing, and he said, well, what did you think? And either we were totally taken in by it or we weren't, and that was an education in itself. He educated us in ways that we wouldn't have gotten if he didn't bring in people to stimulate us. We were very cloistered, and we wouldn't have gotten it. So I remember the time he brought in a black magic guy, and he wouldn't tell us ahead of time whether the person was legitimate or not, and he'd wait to see what we all had to say. And so we got an education. We listened to everybody say what they thought, and then we would know a lot more than we knew before we started. So his education here to us in the monasteries and here at the City of 10,000 Buddhas was very diverse, and you could even say controversial. And we probably wouldn't have gotten that in universities. What we got was special.
我告诉你们各位，现在在这个末法时代，善知识啊是没有那么多的。这个全世界的善知识啊，真正善知识好像凤毛麟角那么少。所有的有名的善知识不一定是个善知识啊，那没有名的善知识你还不认识他是善知识，所以你就像一个苍蝇似的，东飞一头找善知识，西飞一头找善知识啊，知识啊东西南北各处飞，去碰壁去，碰那个墙去，碰那个玻璃窗去，究竟你能不能找着善知识，这是很大的一个问题啊。真正善知识他不会呀自高身价，说自己呀有什么样了不起，或者呀自己是什么佛化身，什么菩萨化身啊，凡是他自己公开表露他是什么佛化身，什么菩萨化身，这都是天魔外道，在这儿啊游吓人心。他知道你这个人呢不是为的法，而只是啊为的贪心啊，来呀想要得到什么利益啊，想要得到什么好处，实际上这正是啊投到那个魔王的那个眷属里头去了。那么你要是有善根，自然而然的时节因缘会遇到善知识，会指示你那么遇到善知识，你要认识这个善知识，真正的善知识没有贪心，没有争心，无所求于人，不自私不自利。要能这样，那他就构成一个善知识；不能这样，那都是天魔外道的一个眷属，在那儿就是叫你颠颠倒倒，叫你没有真正智慧，没有真正把握我今天呢我说这话你们切记要注意的你不要就因为你有那个贪心，所以就遇不到真正善知识。你要想遇到真正善知识，就要没有贪心，那才能遇到真正善知识求法是要有诚心，念兹在兹，我要求一个善知识来指导我，不是我贪图的到那地方那个某某 是有神通，某某又是什么菩萨化身，什么佛化身，他就是佛化身、菩萨化身，他没有法子来帮助你呀开悟的，要你自己呀用功修行，才能得到这个真实的受用。所以这一点，你要认不清楚这一点，那你永远也在佛教里也是做一个魔王的眷属，不是真正佛教徒。